Hello and welcome to the RM video channel. Today I am running a second test on the ILS system on the Carenado Cessna Citation S550 on X-Plane 11. I have set the navigation system to GPS. This is the navigation screen, and on the bearing we have the lateral navigation system on here. We are halfway around an ILS
2500
at Bristol
2500
at 3,000 feet, and I have the GPS on. So we're going to see what happens when we arm the approach for the ILS here, when we turn at Bristol on our base leg. Our ground speed is 241, so we'll reduce that a bit. Now turning onto the base leg at Bristol. So we're now approaching the waypoint for the turn onto the ILS approach. So we will switch the approach system on, and we have glide slope indicator green, which means it has armed itself. Now turn on to finals at around 10 miles. If you have noticed, we have not caught the glide slope. If we had, there would be an indicator here and two indicators here. We'll just reduce the height a bit. And see if that helps. And you can see Bristol Airport
2500
ahead of us. We had one red, three whites, so we should have caught the glide slope. We now have I think 4 whites, so we are too high. We have not caught the glide slope, and the glide slope indicator has now turned white, which means we have lost it. So although it could see it, it did not connect, did not latch onto it. So what we will do is we will do this exercise again and see if we can find a resolution to the issue. So what I'm going to do now is to disconnect the flight and start again from around the same position as before on the downwind leg. So here we are again on the downwind leg on this second ILS test at Bristol. We have the same settings with navigation on GPS, bearing on GPS. We have lateral navigation on. The altitude is 3,000 feet and we have GPS on. You may have wondered about the ILS frequency, and I had set that originally on the first time round at 110.15, and it is still on that. So the issue is, why did the aircraft not, or the ILS system on the aircraft not catch and lock on to the glide slope vertically and horizontally, even though we had GS glide slope in green on here, and it said on here that it was on. So what we're going to do, hopefully this time, is to solve that issue as we turn, once we've turned at Baxen onto the base leg.
$2,500. 2,500.
The landscape around here is quite hilly, so the ground is coming up to meet us on occasion. And we're just about to turn from the downwind leg onto the base leg. So if you remember the first time round, and at the moment, we have nav on GPS, we have bearing on GPS, and we have GPS set. If you wish to see a version on test 1 with the VOR and not the GPS, then you can see this on the RMVideoChannel, and there are several other X-11, Flightsim and Euroscope videos on my RMVideoChannel, which is
2,500.
If you search for it, it's all one word, RMVideoChannel. So now coming onto the base leg. So what we have to do to solve this issue of not locking on to the glide slope, we have to go to nav and switch this to VOR1, because this aircraft uses VOR1 for the glide slope.
2,500.
And the same with bearing 1. And then you'll notice the GPS on the nav HSI has switched off. So we'll now switch on the glide slope approach button, and we have GS lit up here. We also have the glide slope indicator vertical indicator over here, and we have the horizontal indicators over here. On here you will see that we are heading across the glide slope, and as we catch it, these two horizontal glide slope indicators should come into the center.
2500.
At this point I will put the undercarriage down, flaps 1, and we have Bristol Airport ahead of us with 2 reds, 2 whites, which is very good. The autopilot on the Carenado version is supposed to switch off at 500 feet, but I found that it doesn't. It does not do flared landings, as far as I've been able to find out, and so we will disengage the autopilot at around 300 feet. And we're coming in quite nicely on the glide slope vertically, on the glide slope horizontally, and a reasonable speed. So that is the solution. If you're using GPS nav, you have to switch nav SRC onto VR1 and bearing onto VR1 to be able to lock on to the glide slope. Because as I said, the Carenado citation
1000.
uses
1000.
VR1 to lock on.
1000.
So we'll now put on the full flaps.
Five hundred. 400. 300.
Autopilot.
200.
Autopilot.
100. 50. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
A bit of a bumpy landing. Reverse thrust on. So that is the end of the second pass. On the first pass we did not lock onto the glide slope. On this pass we used GPS, switched to VOR, and then switched off the GPS button. We will now do a third pass for something different. This is the third part of the second ILS test for the Cessna Citation S550 on X-Plane 11. We have the same setup as before. We have GPS on SRC and GPS on bearing 1. We have GPS on the HSI, and we have lateral navigation on
2500.
this path, and we are at altitude 3,000 feet. We also have the ILS frequencies set in nav1 and nav2. So the first part of this test was dealt with doing VOR. The second, part was dealt with doing GPS as we are now, but we switched to VRR1 when approaching finals. And we also, on that occasion, switched off GPS on HSI as we did on the first run. So we're now coming up to Baxon and about to turn onto the base leg. And this time
2500.
I'm going to leave
2500.
This instrument on GPS and this instrument on GPS. Last time I switched them to VR1, so I'm going to leave them as they are. Just about to turn at Baxon onto the base leg. And here we go. So I'll bring the throttle back a bit. Under 200 knots ground speed. Gear down.
$2,500.
And then on this third pass, we are going to do just one thing to see what happens. About to turn onto finals. So I'll put flaps 1. And then what I'm going to do, because if we leave things as they are, the glide slope will not be caught. So I switch off GPS and immediately the glide slope vertical comes into effect. Down a bit, as is indicating we are too high. We have the ILS horizontal
2,500
in line, and the vertical glide slope is coming up into position. Throttle back a bit. Still too high. And what I hadn't done, of course, was to put the approach on. now have the glide slope on approach.
Think rate. Think rate. Think rate.
Now that has caught it. So that's fine. Throttle down, full flaps. We have 2 whites, 2 reds. So
500.
on the glide path.
400. 300. 200.
autopilot,
Autopilot off.
100.
autopilot,
Throttle idle.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
And there we are. So the net result of all this is that on the first pass we did not switch off GPS here, and therefore we did not lock on to the glide slope. On the second pass we came in on GPS, but we switched on finals to VOR1 on both nav screen and bearing 1, and that got us locked on to the glide path, but only once we'd switched GPS off here. On this third pass we have left bearing 1 on GPS, and we've left nav on GPS, and we then switched off GPS on the HSI, and that locked on to the glide path. So the net result is you can use either VOR1 on these instruments, or you can use GPS on these instruments. But to lock on the glide path, it is absolutely essential to switch off GPS on this nav HSI. So I hope that has been helpful, and there are several more videos on the RM Video channel. That's all one word, RM Video channel. Please subscribe, and if you wish to make any comments, please do so. And I hope you enjoy this, or have enjoyed this video, and hope you enjoy the other videos on my channel. Bye for now.